On September 4th, 2023, this North Dakota man was airlifted to hospital. Kenoyer Riley Jr. had been suffering symptoms of a mysterious illness for 2 days, and when he passed out and couldn't be woken up, his girlfriend called 911. He died the following day. Steve's sudden death was a shock to everyone around him, but this wasn't an ordinary illness. His partner, Ina Kenoyer, said that he'd been drinking and that he was suffering from heat stroke, but his friends had a different idea.
He's dead. And he was poisoned.
The autopsy confirmed this. It found that he died of ethylene glycol poisoning, antifreeze, and further, there was no alcohol in his blood at all, contrary to what Ina told the police. So who had poisoned him, and why? Steve's friends held their own suspicions.
We think she poisoned him.
She could only be Ina Kenoyer, Steve's loving partner, his common-law wife. His friends and family seemed to think their relationship had deteriorated enough that she'd killed him. But with the question of an inheritance floating around, who was telling the truth? And what really happened to Steve Riley?
I was like, is it cursed? And people that go after it are dying? He's like, I don't know, maybe.
Join us here on The Decoder, where we'll take you through exclusive interview and body cam footage to reveal the twisted story of Ina Kenoyer and Kenoyer Riley Jr. On September 5th, 2023, the police showed up at the Riley property in Ward County, North Dakota. After a fierce battle for his life, Steve Riley had died in hospital, and now they had to find out why. Steve was 51 and had no major health conditions that would have caused this sudden sickness and death. The circumstances were already suspicious, so they arrived as a matter of routine to do some preliminary investigation into his death. Steve Riley lived with his girlfriend, 47-year-old Ina Kenoyer. They lived together for 13 years, and she considered herself married to him by common law. Though this wasn't recognized legally in the state of North Dakota, she'd seen him off to the hospital the day before, believing he was suffering from heat stroke. But the police arrived to tell her something much worse.
If it's true, if he died in Bismarck, still the same day?
I thought everybody knew. I'm sorry.
Don't tell me anything! Oh my God!
Ina appeared devastated by this news. Only a few days ago, Steve had been happy and healthy, and now he was dead. But she wasn't the only one on the property. A friend of Steve's, Billy, had already heard the news and was waiting there for Steve's son, Ryan, to come home from out of state. This wasn't just a compassionate gesture. Billy didn't trust Ina.
If I just keep her from not selling all this stuff, everything will be fine.
So what's your plan right now?
We're making sure nothing goes.
He seemed to think that Ina would want to make a quick buck out of her boyfriend's sudden death.
What is she going to take and sell?
And all my tools, his tools.
Some,
I think it should go to his son.
I think everything, by law, everything goes to the son. So,
because Ina wasn't married to Steve, she didn't automatically inherit his property, and Ryan Riley, who was 21, was on his way from out of state after hearing of his dad's illness and had been intending to get there on September 5th anyway. It seemed a cruel coincidence that this was the day his father had died. Ryan didn't have a relationship with Ina.
You know the son? Yeah? You what?
I haven't seen him since he was 5.
Oh, wow, okay.
Steve had 5 sons from previous relationships, all of whom were now adults. Ina was a separate part of his life from his children, which could lead to friction. Ryan in particular was serving in the military in Texas and had booked emergency leave to come home to see his dad when he learned he was sick. But fatally, he arrived too late. In the immediate aftermath of Steve's death, a particular point of contention was a truck kept in Steve's garage. Ina didn't have any paperwork that proved who owned it, though she said it was registered to Steve. Steve had sent a photo to Ryan, and it seemed destined to go to his son, but everyone wanted a piece of it, including Billy.
He keeps trying to take Steve's truck.
Where's the truck at?
In the garage.
Oh, so
And he's the one that nailed it all shut.
Who is?
Billy.
Is this the paperwork on the thing? Or?
No. This is property that Steve was buying.
Oh.
after his inheritance got here.
Oh, okay.
Everyone in Steve's life was already fighting over his possessions only a day after his death. But it was about more than just some tools and a truck. According to Billy, a few days before Steve died, he had an important meeting with his lawyer at the airport.
The other day, she threw all this stuff out in the yard.
From his house?
Yeah, and he come out and he was holding his head down. And then we're supposed to go up to the airport and meet this guy because he's supposed to get quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
So we went up there, come back, we had to help him out of the car, had to help him in the house.
Billy said that as Steve had been getting sicker, his relationship with Ina had been souring, but their fortunes were apparently turning. Steve learned that he was in line for a $30 million inheritance. In the early hours of September 3rd, only 2 days before Steve's death, the police responded to a call near his house. There had been a report that a local resident, Chad, was intoxicated and behaving aggressively. He had an encounter with Steve and apparently headbutted him. The police came to talk to Steve about the incident. This was at 4 a.m., the same day that he'd later grow mysteriously sick. It was Ina who answered the door.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi. Sorry.
You thought it was Chad?
Yeah.
Who was Chad out
trying
here?
to kick in everybody's door.
Who was he out here fighting?
busted on my light and look at the garbage cans.
Who was here? Who was he fighting with out here?
My fiance, he went for a walk to cool down.
This incident didn't seem to have much to do with Ina or Steve. But Ina was in a confessional mood, excited by the prospect of receiving a fortune.
He gets his inheritance this afternoon. That's why we're moving. We're going to pay all our bills off that we need to pay off.
Do you guys want to press any charges against Chad?
I'll ask him when he gets here.
Are you gonna ask your fiance?
Yeah.
Okay.
He went to cool down because
Okay.
Chad really
Who started the
woke him
fight?
up
Chad?
right
Or
in
who
dead
started
sleep.
the fight? Chad or your fiance?
Chad. Like I said, he has a really important appointment with his lawyer today at 2 o'clock.
Steve wasn't a wealthy guy. Originally from Stockton, California, he'd met Ina at an Easter buffet dinner at a homeless shelter in Washington, which was Ina's home state. A little while later, he moved to Williston, North Dakota.
I guess the guy that was running the shelter on the men's side told him about it and got him a ticket.
Okay, for like oil fields?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he never got a job. And so he started working for KFC.
Okay.
And then he sent me a ticket and pretty much asked me to marry him.
When the couple met, they were both down on their luck. They moved to North Dakota together in search of a better life, but things went from bad to worse.
On his birthday, we took him out for his birthday, and I begged him to let someone else drive or to walk.
Okay.
And he wasn't drunk or nothing yet, but apparently he drank a lot more than I noticed.
Okay.
Because by the time he got to jail, that's when the alcohol was really hitting. And he got the max.
So you got a DUI?
Every time he goes to jail, he got the max.
Okay.
Steve had a criminal past, which made it difficult to find and keep a job, and he had trouble staying on the right side of the law. It didn't help that they had a difficult relationship with their friends, Billy and Lynn.
I mean, Lynn would get mad at him and then call and turn him in or whatever.
Okay.
For something Billy did. We've even gotten into fights.
To stay away from Lynn?
Billy and Lynn and
Okay.
people like that. I don't like calling people nasty because, you know, you don't know what you look like, people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people assume the worst of me because I'm poor.
Right.
According to Ina, Billy and Lynn were bad influences. They said they were involved in felonies themselves and kept dragging Steve back into criminal behavior. It didn't help that during his latest stint in prison, he got into hard drugs. This fractured his relationship with Ina.
Was he
6 months ago, when he ran off with his crack whore, and he ran off to Devil's Lake with her.
But this affair ended badly, and the woman turned him into the cops again. Languishing in jail, Ina visited him, and she'd said she'd take him back, but with some conditions. Steve clearly showed some self-destructive behavior that could have been difficult to deal with, but for some reason, Ina stuck by him.
Pretty much when I said, well, if you can write me out a contract, I'll bail you out. But no drugs, no felonies, you're gonna get your ID, and you're gonna get a real job.
Steve agreed to these conditions. It was the only way he could get Ina to bail him out, and she said that if he went back on his word, he'd have to pay her back the $700. And he did start looking for a job. He worked as a security guard at the state fair that summer, and he did work mowing lawns and fixing trucks. But this wasn't steady pay, and he needed something more permanent to stabilize his finances. Meanwhile, Ina worked in housekeeping at a local hotel. This was the couple's situation, when out of the blue, they received some news that was almost too good to be true.
So this lawyer reached out to him and said
I guess, I don't even know how he found out about it.
Okay.
If he found out about it, doing a background check on him, seeing if anybody owes him money, honestly, I have no idea. It just appeared, and he showed it to me one day.
The letter.
Yeah.
About 3 or 4 months before Steve's death, a lawyer from London reached out to him, saying he represented one of Steve's distant relatives. He said that this relative had died, leaving a $30 million fortune that would go directly to Steve. He said he was flying into Minot Airport in North Dakota, and that he'd arranged the transfer of the money when Steve met him there. Imagine struggling with unemployment and homelessness most of your life, to be told you're due for a windfall of $30 million. It was a life-changing, almost unimaginable sum of money. It would certainly change Steve's life, but was it too good to be true?
And he wanted me to have a copy to make sure, if something ever happened to him. And he was reading that the money wasn't cursed or whatever. He's like, every single person that went for the Riley money over there,
Yeah.
even this 21-year-old, had passed away.
Steve seemed superstitious about accepting the money, but it seemed ridiculous to let the idea of a curse stand in the way of inheriting a fortune. He made plans about what he'd do with it, including buying up his neighbor's land, opening his own auto shop, and sharing it with his sons. The one person who wasn't involved in his future plans? His girlfriend, Ina. She believed she was entitled to a share of his money, including the inheritance as his common-law wife. Legally, this wasn't the case. But there was a bigger problem. Each time they'd tried to arrange a meeting, the lawyer had postponed it, saying that someone was contesting the will and he needed more time. They finally set the date for September 3rd. This was what Ina was so excited about early that morning when the police came to talk to her. But when Steve had gone with Billy to meet the lawyer at the airport, the lawyer had never showed up.
And I don't know how to get a hold of the guy in London with his inheritance. He should be here in town. I don't understand, why he never showed up at the airport.
Steve had desperately needed this money when he was alive. Now he was dead, Ina wanted a piece of it. But what if there was no money? Perhaps this was the realization Steve came to driving back home that fateful September 3rd, that he was still penniless, and the lawyer's letter had been a scam to get his bank details and personal information. But in the immediate future, he had other things to worry about. He was getting mysteriously ill. Billy dropped Steve back home from the airport, thinking that Ina would look after him.
Because he's not happy. She was supposed to call the ambulance. She never called the ambulance.
She said he just had heat stroke and needed to rest. It was only on September 4th that she finally called 911 for her ailing boyfriend. But this time, he was unresponsive.
Not responding. He's on the crack of the bed right there. She tried to sit him up and fell off the bed.
Steve's sudden decline, and the question of the inheritance couldn't just be a coincidence. In fact, someone had suggested that one was the cause of the other, implying that Steve had committed suicide because he'd given so many personal details to a scammer.
He just went through that with his dad. His dad shot himself in the head with a shotgun.
Okay.
And I don't think he would want his kids, to go through what he went through.
Okay.
But then I could be wrong, he didn't want to face the fact that it was a scam.
Ina raised the possibility that it had been suicide. She also said it had been Steve who'd refused to seek medical attention at first.
And I kept begging him to let me call the ambulance. And he's like, no, I'll be fine with some sleep.
So what do you think is wrong with Steve at this point? Like, why? What do you think is wrong with Steve? Why is he sick?
I thought they were right. It was heat stroke.
Okay.
Because he wasn't puking yet. And it was like finally kind of sleeping in and out.
Ina also referenced a time about 6 months ago when he'd accidentally poisoned himself.
I actually called the ambulance last time he was this coherent. But he accidentally grabbed on to a cup, and he kind of finally confessed he accidentally drank some kind of fluid.
She painted a picture of Steve as an accident-prone, clumsy person.
Huh.
I don't know. He ingested it smoking a cigarette, because he was always spilling crap on his cigarettes and smoking it.
But in her interview, she maintained she thought this time it was heat stroke.
It'll mimic poisoning, I read. This time I read.
What do you mean this time?
Because the doctor said it looked like he drank antifreeze, or had antifreeze in his system. So I Googled it, and it had the same symptoms as heat stroke.
Okay. When did you Google that?
The day he was in the hospital.
The risk of heat stroke could be worsened by alcohol consumption. And according to Ina, Steve had been drinking a lot before he went to see the lawyer. Maybe he was nervous, or maybe he was preemptively celebrating.
How much do you think he had to drink?
Almost a whole case.
From what time to what
There
time?
was 3 beers left. I looked in the case.
And when you say case, you mean a 24-pack?
Yep.
So he drank almost a whole case of beer from what time to what time?
I have no clue.
You don't know when he started drinking?
Pretty much when he got out of bed.
Did he drink anything else?
Just the glass of water that I brought him, and his tea. I made iced tea because he begged for iced tea.
As the police talked to Ina, one thing was becoming clear, that she was the person who'd had the most access to Steve. Specifically, she'd made him multiple drinks that day that he'd fallen ill. But she was casting suspicion elsewhere.
I mean, Steve
I don't know how
Okay.
Billy thinks. He's messed up in the head. They're nasty people, I'm telling you. But that's the only...
I'm not doubting that they're nasty. I'm just saying, I'm just trying to wrap my head around who
But
would
then
gain
again,
something
I don't see
from
him
this.
really doing that. I could see Lynn more, and she wasn't even there.
Okay.
She's more of the I'll poison you type person,
Okay.
than Billy. Billy will just wait until you go to sleep and then steal from
Okay.
you, right? Type person.
Okay. So as far as you and Steve,
So
how
that's why I'm
was-
thinking maybe Steve did it to himself.
In a dire situation because of the inheritance scam, Steve's reasons for wanting to end his life made sense to the police. But so did Ina's possible motives for killing him herself, if he hadn't been planning to give her any money.
Were you expecting that if something, you would get
No.
money?
No.
Okay.
Like I said, I would have given it to his ex-wives because they deserve it way more than I did.
Okay.
Because they were actually married.
Okay.
And I understand where they are coming from now. Because Cheryl stabbed him, I guess.
Is that one of his ex-wives?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's his first ex-wife. She literally stabbed him. Melissa won't talk to him at all. Put a restraining order against him.
Steve had a troubled relationship history, and his relationship with Ina was the latest in a long string of them. The very day he'd gotten sick, she'd been seen throwing his belongings out of the house, and her story didn't quite match up. Now she'd said he'd stopped drinking when he got ill, and she'd been giving him water and tea to try to rehydrate him. But when the paramedics first came, it was a different story.
You told the paramedics when they were there that morning or afternoon that he had been drinking till 5 in the morning.
She'd also told her neighbors that she'd taken Steve to the clinic to get checked out, which was a lie. There was no record of him seeking any medical attention anywhere in the area until the paramedics were called on September 4th. In her interview on September 13th, the police presented Ina with these contradictions. Her response?
I want a lawyer.
Okay. You asked for a lawyer, Ina, so we're just gonna end this now. Okay, I'm not gonna talk anymore. All right?
You guys are so unbelievable.
The facts of the case were these. Steve, and by extension Ina, had been duped into thinking he'd been receiving a fortune of $30 million. They'd been living in fraught circumstances together for a while, and he had a history of running off with other women and cutting her out. He hadn't included her in his plans for the money, and when he got mysteriously ill, she didn't rush to seek medical care. In fact, she lied about caring for him. She just served him iced tea, the sweet taste of which can apparently mask the taste and smell of antifreeze. If you think this adds up to a suspicious picture, you're not alone. The Ward County Police thought so too. When Ryan Riley arrived in the state, he told them that his father and Ina hadn't been happy in a while, and his father had wanted to leave her. He said she was leeching off Steve.
And he kind of just wanted to leave her because she didn't really have a job and was like leeching off of him. Just laid around all day.
So he wanted to leave, Ina?
Mm-hmm.
Steve's friends told the same story. They said he'd talked about leaving Ina when the money from the inheritance came through.
Did Steve ever talk about leaving Ina?
All the time.
Okay.
Every day. Every day.
Do you think she knew about that?
Mm-hmm.
She did. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And the paperwork.
And the paperwork he needed to sign, yeah.
Okay.
And, I said, well, will Ina have to? And he said, no, we're not married, he says.
She also kept tabs on his online presence, particularly his interactions with the lawyer.
Going into Steve's email to get these emails.
She transferred the information to
To her phone?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Steve's phones would always go missing because we'd say, well, Steve, have you heard from him? Well, my phone's gone again, Well, then he'd get another phone. Well, then we'd give him some money for some food and to get some more minutes on his phone.
No, it's either Link or Billy told me that when this first realized that she might be doing something, his phone disappeared.
Okay.
And Steve did lose things occasionally.
She'd also apparently made comments about using antifreeze to kill him in the past. This matched up with her social media presence. In May 2021, she went on a spree of resharing her old photo posts of Steve of an account where she'd named herself Ina Riley with derogatory comments. She wrote, "I wish I was worried about this man. Watch out for this man, he'll bleed you dry and spit you out." And from day one, he has put his own in front of mine and made me feel like people who go out to destroy his life on purpose because it's a game to them are better people than me so he can have them. Her most foreboding post read, "I hope you get what you deserve, you F." They stayed together another 2 years following this rageful spiral, but it was a fateful indicator of things to come and a sign of where her anger could lead. The police conducted a search of the property, looking for physical evidence to corroborate the evidence of her motive, and they found it. In the living room, they discovered a capless Windex bottle containing a bright green liquid, suspected to be antifreeze. In the garage, they found a glass cup and a mug filled with the same liquid. This was enough. On October 30th, they arrested her.
Never been arrested before like this. I've never done anything. I haven't done anything. Freaking lost the love of my life, and this is how I'm treated. If I was gonna kill him, I would have killed him the day he lied to me and I found out he was doing drugs.
I'm just gonna grab your arm so you don't fall, alright?
And I would have done it physically, not.
As they arrested her for her boyfriend's murder, Ina continued to deny it. But the evidence had mounted, and in May 2024, she pleaded guilty. She admitted to adding antifreeze to Steve's sweet tea to disguise the taste, and she did it because she believed he was in line to receive a $30 million inheritance, one that she wouldn't see a cent of because he was cutting her out. Due to her faulty understanding of common law marriage, she thought if Steve was dead, she could receive the inheritance herself, but there wasn't any money at all. And even if there had been, she wouldn't have been entitled to it. A fraught relationship, a selfish misunderstanding, and a poorly timed scam added up to a recipe for murder. And she tried to blame the death on anyone but herself, casting suspicion on Steve's friends, Billy and Lynn, or even Steve himself. In October 2024, Ina Kenoyer was sentenced to a life sentence of 25 years in prison, with the other 25 suspended, followed by 10 years of probation. She was also ordered to pay $3,455 in restitution to the victim's family, including his 5 sons, whom she tried to cheat out of an inheritance, as large or small as it ended up being. At the sentencing hearing, Steve's sister made a victim impact statement.
As so many other families of victims often feel, the punishment should fit the crime, and lucky for you, the Department of Corrections doesn't serve antifreeze or iced tea. My opinion of you is what you did to my brother is that you ironically are an exact reflection of the home that you kept and lived in. Vile, filthy, disgusting, embarrassing, gross, full of feces and pure trash.
What do you think about this twisted story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe, keep up with our channel, and we'll see you very soon on the Decoder.